I've traveled to Port Edward here in northern British Columbia to visit the North Pacific Cannery, which is a National Historic Site. I'm here with Lori Davey, and she takes people around to tell them about this wonderful place. Tell me what people can see when they come here.
Well, there's many things to see when we come here. We have different nations that were here and represented during the canning industry from 1889 to 1981. And we have, at this area, we have the First Nations buildings, and we have the Chinese bunkhouse. We have the First Nations net loft, a machine shop. At the other areas, we have the European net loft and the canning building with all the machinery in it that actually process the cans. We have a manual canning line and a mechanized canning line.
Wonderful. Okay, let's go.
Okay. This is the First Nations building. There would have been 8 to 10 people living in a building this size. This is a replica of one, and they would have had about 100 buildings along the coastline here, and they would have had, their whole families with them. The First Nations people were the only nation that brought their whole family. Every other nation, the Chinese, Japanese, and the Europeans, only the men came.
Wow.
I know.
There's a lot of people that would have been here.
Yes, there were between 600 and 800 people on site during the prime of the industry. So salmon was very significant here in this area. There were 200 canneries on the west coast, and there were 50 just in this area, 30 of which ended up working for the peak of the industry. And we had 4 different nations on site. We had the First Nations, we had the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Europeans.
And what exactly were they doing?
They were fishing mostly. They were canning fish in the cannery, worked in the canning buildings. There was an office crew, the European people, or the office group, but they would maintain the site, and but fishing was the main job here for sure.
And what's happened now? How come the canneries aren't running?
Well, there's a few reasons. The canneries aren't running because of the lack of salmon. To start with, that's one thing, but then also the labor unions had started back in the early 1900s and were demanding that the different machinery were made safer, they were better equipped, that sort of thing, and the safety issues were there and they had to be rectified. And the canneries had to determine whether they could afford to fix the machinery and upgrade the machinery when salmon stocks were declining. So the decision was made to close the canneries.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next huge building here.
I know. This is the First Nations machine shop. They would have been here to repair or replace items, and they would have had to make them occasionally when something in the canning line would have gone down, or one of the boats had had some trouble. This is a shroud, and this item here, right here, and they would put that over the propeller of the boat to keep the boat from a net from getting in the propellers of the boat. Wow. This is what they would do. The items behind here, there's many different items behind here. This is a saw, and we used this in our conservation and restoration for the last 10 years. The machinery works.
Wow.
Very interesting, eh?
I'm sure a lot of people would be fascinated to come in here and see all these incredible older things that probably still work.
Oh, and they do work. These all work, and we lose men on this tour right here in the shop. I know.
Well, yeah, because if you were really into tools, this would be a great place.
Indeed, indeed.
Okay, what's upstairs?
Upstairs is the First Nations net loft, which is very exciting.
Okay.
It's a very unique place. This is the First Nations net loft. The ladies of the First Nations would have been here, the Shinshan, the Gitxsan, and the Niska. They would have been in this building repairing nets. You see the ropes hanging from the top there. The nets would have been hanging from there to dry after they've been in a bluestone tank. We'll see that in just a moment. The net over here on the wall, it's a First Nations net up here on the wall. It's a First Nations net. It's
this one here with the wood?
Indeed, made of wood. And the First Nations would put that in the water, and the fish would go in, and they get small, 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 and they get stuck in there, and they're caught.
Wow, and then this is another kind of net.
This is a gill net.
A gill net.
And right behind us here, we have a gill net. This is a First Nations gill net, and it's made of linen and cotton. It would have cost about $150 in the time. They would have had their own nets. The corks on the top would make it float. The sinkers on the bottom would make it stand up in the water.
Wow, okay. Now I see children's toys. What is this about?
Yes, you do, indeed. Well, any First Nations child under 8 did not work in the cannery. 9 and up we did. So this was the First Nations daycare as well. It was a social place. It was where they had events, weddings, parties. They even played basketball in this building. So this is a swing that little people would have had. Little people would climb the nets and play in the rafters.
And what would the men do and what would the women do? Do they have different jobs?
They did. The men would worked in the machine shop, and they were fishermen, basically. The women were here in the net repair place. They were also in the canning building. They were a very important part of the canning process.
Wow.
They would be very different.
And how long were they working here from?
They worked from 1889 to 1968, 69, and then again until 81. And we have a rope making machine just right over here. The result of the rope making machine.
Can I touch it?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so this rope making machine would have made this.
That's right.
Oh, this is really heavy.
I
This
know.
rope is like seriously heavy. It doesn't look like it would be. And what
is.
did they make it out of?
Out of the nylon nets that were no longer going to be used for fishing.
Brilliant idea. Look at this. Oh my goodness, this is so heavy. Wow.
This is, we had cork on the top of the nets, like I said, but it was high maintenance. We had to tar it every time it came in. And we would have to...
Can I touch this?
Yes, if you have to. Yeah, sure that you can. And it's cork, indeed. See it?
And this would make it so that the nets floated.
Floated, right? But we would have to tar it because it would not it wouldn't get waterlogged if we tarred it. So what we did, that was high maintenance. So what we did is we went to cedar, and this is cedar here. And cedar is very low maintenance. You don't have to do anything with it, it floats. Yeah, this is
cedar.
Yes, and it's bigger, it's much improved over this process.
Fast, and this is local.
Yes, it is, oh yes.
Wow.
There's lots of cedar. This is a machine that makes, that threads the shunt, which is the needle. So this is the needle, and it's a threader. So you put the thread and the needle on here, just turn the handle, and it threads the needle for you.
What a fascinating place.
We have our bluestone tank. This is our bluestone tank here. It's copper sulfate. So when the nets come up from the water, because everything came from the water, come up, they be dunked in the bluestone tank to get the algae off. Linen and cotton nets, we had a lot of algae on them. The nylon nets were less so. The nylon nets were introduced in after World War II.
There's so much to see here.
I know.
I'd love to move on to the next building.
All righty. This is the mechanized canning line. It's machine driven, and it was a big improvement from the last time, from the last line we had, which was manual. It's belt driven, as you can see. This is a butchering table. These are the sliming bins, and this is where the guts would have been taken out of the fish before they are processed to be canned. The machine up ahead here is a canning machine. You see the belts that are driving it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the fish would have come from the sliming bins into the back barrel there, where they would come through here in the machine to the gang knife. The gang knife would have cut the fish the size of the can. They would come down through here. The can would have come from upstairs, the canning reform line. They would put salt in the can. They would come into this machine, and the can would have the salmon would have been pushed into the can in this machine. This machine is called Big Bertha. That would come along here further. This is a weighing machine. The weighing machine is the machine that tells us if it's the right weight or not. If it wasn't, it would have gone into this inside line. But now, if it's the right weight, it would go into here, into the closer line to us, and it would continue on. These ladies would weigh the can if it was wrong, put in or take out, and then put the can back in the line, go forward here, and it would have been, the lid would have been put on the can, and then it comes forward again here through the machine, and it goes here, and this is like a car wash. It would clean the can off before it went down to this machine, and this is the vacuum sealer. On the manual line, we use lead to seal the cans, but on this mechanized line, we had a vacuum sealer. It was the biggest improvement in the canning line.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the whole process would have happened here. You would have literally had the fish being cut, put in cans.
That's right.
And sealed and everything.
That's right. And they would have come in, and there would have been 4 mechanized lines running all at once at the peak of the industry.
Fascinating.
This machine would have done 170 cans a minute. That's very quick.
Wow.
Very quick. They're not running nearly as fast right now
No.
in the demonstration because we wouldn't see the process that way.
Well, thank you so much for showing me all
You're
these
welcome.
incredible things here.
You're welcome.
I've learned a lot, and now I'm going to really appreciate those cans of salmon that I eat all the time even
Right.
more.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.